Welcome to your community of fee-for-service financial advisors who are successfully building profitable firms that serve the next generation of clients. You'll learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your great life and help clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I am your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to welcome XYPN member Cody Garrett, founder of Measure Twice Financial, based in Houston, Texas, onto the show today. Cody started his career as a professional music director and keyboardist before discovering a career in financial planning. Cody worked at an RIA for about 2.5 years until the floodgates opened, and he started having dozens of clients reaching out looking for just a comprehensive financial plan without investment management services on the back end. His firm did offer that service, but when he realized he had generated more revenue in 2 months than he made personally in the entire year, he decided to build a solo practice. While he's known for being an advice-only advocate, with advice-only being defined as only offering financial planning services without any implementation offering on the investment management side, he really emphasized that you need to start with who is your ideal client, then figure out the right service model, then figure out the right fee structure. His firm was built to serve his ideal client, which are DIY investors looking to early retire in the next 5 years. Cody also has a consumer-facing offering to help spread awareness about what real financial planning is, along with training for advisors that allows him to share his planning process with them. Without further ado, here's my interview with Cody. Looking for an event made just for advisors like you? It's XYPN Live, and it's the conference experience you've been waiting for to help you reimagine your processes and reconnect with your purpose as a financial planner. With over 30 content sessions this year, there's expert knowledge for everyone and every firm, along with countless opportunities to connect with like-minded advisors and industry experts. XYPN Live 2022 is happening this October 8th through the 11th in Denver, Colorado. Learn more and grab your pass for this can't-miss event at live.xyplanningnetwork.com. Hey, Cody, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting me, Alan.
So I think we met for the first time at XYPN Live last year. At least that's the first time I remember sitting down and having a conversation with you over, I think it was breakfast.
Over one of the mini quiches. Very hoity-toity.
Yeah. The small quiches. Those were good. But just about sort of your career, what you're building with Measure Twice Financial, this new term called advice only that's starting to pick up steam in the industry, and just sort of all the entrepreneurial things that you have your hands in. So I'm appreciative that you've been willing to come on the show, and this is going to be probably pretty wide ranging for listeners, but there's a lot going on in your world. So I want to be sure we can introduce it. So as always, just a little bit of background on I'm just fascinated by how people find financial planning. So can you give me a quick background on sort of what your career was out of college and sort of what led you into financial planning?
Yeah. So like even going pre-college, I grew up in a NASA family, kind of engineering, left brain, very analytical, data-driven people. My mom currently trains astronauts at NASA. My grandfather worked for NASA for over 40 years, developing the landing system and the sensors for landing on the moon, stuff that they actually did rocket science. So on the flip side, I went to two different colleges for music. I got a bachelor's degree in music theory and then studied at Berklee College of Music for contemporary piano performance. So did a lot of contemporary jazz and Motown, gospel, pretty much any type of music people would pay me for, I would learn how to play and arrange for. What's funny is that everybody in my family thought that was rocket science, right? Like they were actually doing the rocket science, and I was just, so I would say I really got started doing music because I felt like it was the only thing I was good at, because I started it around 5 or 6. By the time I got to my senior year in high school, it was either be a voiceover actor, which I had no idea how to even get into that, or become a professional musician, kind of figure it out. Like the 4 years bachelor's degree was like the 4 years to figure it out. So I did get my bachelor's degree in music theory, went to Berklee College of Music, then flew back to Houston and I worked as a professional music director, arranger, keyboardist for about 10 years before making the jump into personal finance.
10 years, that's a long time. That wasn't like 1 year in, you're like, I'm not going to
yeah, it wasn't
like
a side hustle.
Yeah, this was a career. So yeah, I mean, spending 10 years on the music side, what I guess, how did you discover that financial planning was something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, so it was kind of like the accidental adulting that happens with being a professional musician. You have variable income and fixed expenses. So I kind of learned how to be self-reliant, independent on accident. I had a small apartment. I had like one of those 500 square foot apartments, just one big rectangle above somebody's garage. I always had like a good amount of savings. I'd say like I always remember having like ten to $20,000 in the bank, which for somebody who knows nothing about personal finance and didn't learn anything about it in school, like look back, I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. I would say what's funny about it though is, so 4 years ago, I didn't know what an IRA was. So we'll talk about certainly the transition between not knowing anything about that to now owning a financial planning firm. But I really got into the personal finance stuff when I got married in 2015. So after being a musician for, kind of, I guess I'm trying to think of the timeline of that. But yeah, I got married in 2015. And then within the next 3 years, we both had student loan debt. So I really wanted to kind of take extreme ownership financially for our household. I felt like I had to take that responsibility. We have a very traditional approach to finances. Like we believe kind of from the Christian perspective, like one flesh, like it's not like her debt, my income, her. It's like, it's all ours. So together, I was working at a church at that point. So we had the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University DVD set at my church, since they had that Financial Peace University program there. So I took it home, watched it, learned about the baby steps, and got what he calls gazelle intense. We paid off about $60,000 of student loan debt in 2 years, making about $80,000. So even there, $80,000, I was actually made pretty good money as a musician. That was just sole income, making about $80K. But learning more about personal finance, once we got out of debt, I was like, okay, well, Dave Ramsey said it's time to start investing.
Yep.
Okay? And even taking his own words, I was like, I'm not going to invest in anything I don't understand. Mm-hmm. And I'm the type of person that if I want to learn a lot about a subject, I check out all the books from the library, listen to all the podcasts 2 times speed. I've done this with so many different like topics in my life, including like things like poker and chess and jujitsu. Like I get obsessed and I go down the rabbit hole. So I went down the rabbit hole to learn about investing. That turned into a year of like just really deep learning. I don't know how many, like probably like went like binge listened to about 10 different personal finance podcasts along the way. And what really led me into like thinking about it as a profession is I reached out to my mom one day. She said, "What have you been up to?" I said, "I'm obsessed with this personal finance stuff. Like I'm really excited to start investing in things." She said, "You should talk to our family friend, Joe. I think he knows a lot about this. He works in that profession." So I reached out to Joe, and guess what? Joe has been a CFP for 20 years. He owns an independent RIA, an AUM-based firm. And he says, "Hey, if you want to really drink out of the fire hose and learn a lot really fast, enroll in a CFP education program." So as a professional musician, I enrolled in the CFP curriculum. Within 2 to 3 classes, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I really wanted to help families align their money with what they claim is important to them, aligning their money with their values and desired outcomes. So within 2 to 3 classes of the CFP program, Joe actually offered me to come on because he knew I needed the experience requirement, the 2 to 3 years. Yep. And he's like, "Hey, you can just be a sponge, like just learn everything about the business, be in every client meeting. Don't just be a fly on the wall, but actually be integrated in the entire planning process." So I worked there for about 2.5 years before launching my firm. So I worked at the restaurant long enough to learn all the recipes.
Yep.
And then I left to kind of launch my own restaurant.
Yeah, decided to open your own. No, I love it because I connect with a story around Dave Ramsey because actually that was how I discovered. I didn't know financial planning was a profession, but when I was 15, my mom made me go through his book and like got me envelopes, and she would write me a check every month for what seemed like an unbelievable amount of money. I think it was like $200 or $300, but it was all the money she normally spent on me, and I had to budget it with dollars into the little envelopes and that sort of thing. And so I have my own, Dave Ramsey has blocked me on Twitter. So I have my own issues.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm in the select club of every financial planner out there. But I had my issues, obviously, with some of the teachings. But it is amazing how many of us actually have a connection back to that program for just sort of getting introduced to this topic of money. And, that ultimately led many of us down the path to, just get interested in it and get into the profession. So how did your mom react? I guess in just your family, I'm assuming that, I don't know, maybe they didn't pressure you, but I would think just social pressures that you're going to become a rocket scientist. Then you became a musician. And then suddenly you're back to what appears to be the rocket side. You and I know there's as much, left brain and right brain. Right. It's not one or the other, but like, I guess, how was was there pressure on you to be something, or was it pretty easy for you to make those switches?
Yeah, it was funny. I think the parallels are amazing between music and personal finance. I consider myself a left brain creative, because like looking back, I realized, hey, I've always worked in creative fields, like very right side, but always very data driven oriented work. Because even getting a degree in music theory is like getting a degree in the science of music. Sure. What's fascinating is that my family never pressured me into to try to get me into one of the more kind of respectable careers of engineer and doctor and things like that. And I think it's because they knew that I was driven. Just like I mentioned before, when they saw me interested in something, I'd go all the way. I'd go deep end. And they were like, and another thing too, I really do believe this, as if you're enjoying what you're doing, then you're much more likely to become good at it. Right. So a lot of people do go into these other respectable traditional careers, but they don't enjoy it at all. And not just in terms of the joy of the job and considering it quote unquote successful in a qualitative sense, but the doctors who really love being doctors, they seem to have actually a more successful track than the ones who are just doing it because their mom told them to. So actually, fascinatingly, I didn't transition from being a musician to a financial planner for financial reasons. So a lot of people assume that I was kind of one of the starving musicians, living gig to gig. But in reality, I cut my pay in half to become a financial planner. It was actually a decision from music to money. The decision was more around, how can I eat dinner with my wife every day? I wanted to make a personal decision of it wasn't about, I don't really use the phrase work-life balance, but I wanted to have some stability in, we were both working 8 to 5, and then I was kind of working that 5 to 8, and then all the weekend gigs and stuff. And I was like, hey, I want financial stability, but can I have it at the same time of being able to enjoy my life at home with my wife? Yeah. So that was actually the main reason I transitioned. And just one more thing, when I mentioned it to my mom, or my family, they were like, go for it, because they knew that I had a pretty good track record of becoming passionate about something and doing well in it.
No, I love that, because it just speaks to the intentionality around, my definition of financial planning is helping people live their great lives. That's what we get to do. And yet we so often, or maybe so rarely, we do that for ourselves as financial planners. And so being really intentional about how do we want to be home for dinner every night? Do we care? Do we want to be home on the weekends? Do we want to make a certain amount of money? Do we want to be able to drop the kids off at school? Whatever the thing is for you, do you want to be able to travel and spend time with your religious or charitable organization, whatever the thing is, being really intentional about that. Cause I think so often we don't do that for ourselves. And candidly, we build the wrong business, which we'll talk about with your businesses now, being sure that we're really intentional about the business that we build, because there's no right way to build it except for whatever way ultimately is going to support our own version of a great life. Right.
The two things missing for, I guess, most, not just business owners, but just people in their career in general, is that they don't ask the question why enough. That you talk about finding your why. I know there's a lot of books about that, finding your why. And the second thing is kind of the Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. I think a lot of people chase this initial metric of success. And then even once they get there, actually a big thing for me is I actually educate clients about this, that a lot of us focus on financial wellness because that's the industry we're in. Sure. But I always talk about physical, mental, spiritual, relational wellness are also very important. Not only important, but they're all they're dominoes, or they're all part of the same.
They're all connected.
Puzzle, right? They're all connected. So I really do find, and when people focus so much on the financial area, they actually end up succeeding in that financial area. But by the time they do, they turn around and their physical, mental, spiritual, relational, all the relationships are kind of gone at that point. So I've thankfully, as a young whippersnapper, a young, late 20s, I realized that I wanted, again, it's not really about this perfect balance, but I wanted to be cognizant and, like you said, intentional about all of those areas, in business and personal life. I really wanted to focus on those things in whatever I chose to do.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting how Yeah, just again, it's just about intentionality. It's about just being sure that we're building the life that ultimately we want to build, and
on purpose, right?
Yep. And I've seen, I mean, there's really interesting stories now of financial planning firms that have opened gyms, like literally like workout gyms or, wellness centers. And, my first job out of college, the reason I moved to South Dakota to work with Rick Kaler is because we worked with a therapist on staff, and like he was contract, but like he was there, I think 20 hours a week or something, like, because we didn't believe you could do the money side if you didn't do the relationship, mental communication side. And again, you don't see a lot of like super wealthy people that have like horrific physical challenges going on that, anyway, those things are so interconnected. And when one thing goes, the rest of them tend to go. So you said you worked at the firm for 2.5 years before ultimately deciding to launch your own. What drove that decision to go solo? Because I'm assuming you're making good money, you're learning a lot. Like why go solo at that point?
Yeah, it was funny. I think that many small business owners, not just financial advisors, like they do that kind of that whole thing of like, you build it and they will come.
Oh, sure.
Right. They launch a business and then they try to find people to sell their service or product to. The opposite happened to me. They all came to me and said, build this. So this actually happened in January of 2021. So just a month before I decided to launch my firm, a prospective client called. He was really frustrated on the phone. He said, I have interviewed over 10 fee-only CFPs, and none of them will provide comprehensive financial planning without an expectation to manage my money. And he's like,
because in the end, that's what we do, right? We do comprehensive financial planning. We do your plan. We do your investment management. We do it all. Right.
So, he was like, well, he ultimately saw what is still kind of normal in the industry, which is, first of all, like they wouldn't, the advisors he was reaching out to wouldn't do any financial planning until he moved his money over. Mm-hmm. Secondly, it was that the financial planning was like a loss leader, a gateway to ultimately charge rent on his money. And that's the kind of the phrasing he used. And I thought that was kind of a one-off. I received that, I received that inquiry from one of the personal finance groups I was on Facebook. And I thought that was a one-off. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, yes, thankfully we do offer comprehensive financial planning, a standalone project-based planning. That's great. With no expectation to manage your money. But in reality, I kind of thought about, like, well, actually we do kind of have the expectation to manage your money because that is our primary service at this firm. And I worked with him, but fascinatingly, like that month, about four clients a week reached out wanting that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How did they find you? Was it really the Facebook group? And that just sort of, did you have a post or a blog or something take off that really drove that?
Yeah, that was actually about 6 months after having the Measure Twice Money blog, which is, as I was learning the CFP material, I believe that when you teach, you learn twice. And also, the best way to learn is to teach. So I created the Measure Twice Money blog as a way to just share with other people what I was learning. I had a sense of urgency, not just to learn, like tighten my own learning, but like I know people need to know these things, especially the fundamentals of personal finance. So I started creating content. But more importantly, I was on these personal Facebook groups like the FIRE movement, like those. What's funny is before I even became a financial planner, I was already in those Facebook groups. Mm-hmm. Again, like that philosophy is ultimately around aligning your money with what's important to you. So they understand like that holistic financial planning perspective, but yet the DIY investor community are very anti-advisor at the same time. So anytime I was sharing education or really engaging with people within the groups, I never mentioned I was an advisor. I just knew that as soon as I mentioned I was an advisor, I'd probably either get kicked out of the group or people are like, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're trying to sell an annuity, right? So I just kept my mouth shut on the advisor side and I just help people. I just help educate people. And after doing 6 months of that turned into the 4 to 5 prospective clients per week, because DIY investors, especially within the FIRE community, they were thinking, okay, who is it? Like, why is this guy helping us so much? How does he know so much about personal finance and what's in it for him? Mm-hmm. And they all kind of Googled me and found me outside, through just the Google sphere and the Meta, back in the day of who is this guy? And they found out I worked at a firm and they reached out and said, I think that you might be able to help us. And I had already built that trust and certainly the knowledge that they needed. They knew I needed, they had the knowledge, but they could trust that I was going to work in their best interest because I never once mentioned my services as an advisor.
You just dated us because we're going to be like, oh, remember when we had Facebook before it was Meta?
Right.
I think I got Facebook my freshman year of college. I got there.
When you actually needed a college email address.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. They were like, do you have the Facebook? I'm like, I don't know what this is. So you're still at your firm at this point, at the firm where you're an employee. You have a comprehensive planning package that doesn't include investment management. You also can manage money. All of a sudden, these prospects start coming in. So I guess, again, what made the decision to go solo instead of, continue with that firm?
Yeah. So within 2 months, I brought in $42,000 of project-based financial planning fees, which was almost as much as I got paid for the whole year in terms of salary. Certainly there were like great benefits above that. But I kind of thought to myself, okay, I'm driving 2 hours a day. I'm working 40 hours a week in a traditional office. We also we worked in the office since it was a small team, we actually worked in the office during the entire COVID situation. Not that I was against that decision or anything, but I was driving 2 hours a day to working 40 hours a week. And I said, okay, based on, I kind of typed it out. I said, hey, I could work, as not my decision wasn't just financial, but I was thinking to myself, okay, I could work 10 hours a week, not drive at all. And when I calculated it, make over $100,000 of gross income, probably keep my margins, high margin, low business expenses. And yeah, I just decided, and again, I did have the fallback of, if this doesn't work out, I'm pretty sure I could find another role as a CFP in Houston, Texas.
Yeah, that was my story as well, where it's like when your plan B, your fallback plan is do the thing you're currently doing, go get a job as a CFP in a financial advisory firm. It almost feels low risk to then start a firm because you have a fallback. Like our fallback was not, oh, well, I'm going to be homeless and I'm not gonna be able to pay rent. You just go get a job, Yeah,
I can go build an Edward Jones down the street or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. That's like plan D. Let's put that. Right. So you decide to launch your own firm. You go through the process, get launched. I guess what did you you made the decision to, again, we talked around a little bit of this sort of advice only concept where it's not only that you have an option to do financial planning without investment management, it's that you don't offer investment management at all. So
right.
How did you decide, what brought you to the conclusion that was the type of firm you ultimately wanted to build?
Yeah. So every decision I'm making in my business comes down to whom do you serve and how do you serve? So I thought, who do I serve? At this point, my firm, it's DIY investors on the path to early retirement within 5 years. Okay. And what I mean by DIY investors, as we know, there's a lot of different forms of implementation. DIY here means really implementing everything, including the investment management. But I thought about, who are these people? First of all, I'm really that type of person. I DIY my own investments. I actually recently put out on Twitter, hey, financial advisors, how many of you DIY your own investments? And 70% said they did. Yep. Right. So I would say that, first of all, most even advisors are DIY investors. Anyone who has not hired a financial advisor is technically a DIY investor. So it's definitely blue ocean kind of stuff. But I thought, okay, well, these DIY investors, when they go through the comprehensive financial planning process, when we come to investments, when I recommend investments to them, they don't want the recommendation to be, and I can do it for you. Right? They wanted to specifically avoid that conflict of interest, not just that I would try to move their money, but that when it comes down to actually giving them recommendations about their investments, they didn't want the recommendation to be, oh, I can handle that for you. Right. Just here, sign here. Right? They really wanted deep, comprehensive analysis and recommendations where literally none of the implementation could possibly be done by me. Therefore, they would understand that it's all going to be in my best interest, because they're there's literally nothing in it for this person, whether they recommend life insurance, health insurance, disability insurance, get my estate planning documents drafted, manage my investments this way. The only thing I sell is personalized education, and that's it, which perfectly aligns with this kind of the FIRE community of consumers they're very bright. A lot of them even read, I would say half of the clients I serve actually read the Kitsis articles. They like to go beyond. They like to go beyond the basics.
Oh, so yeah, that's way beyond the basics.
Well, yeah, even for us. The three things I say are they have the time, the temperament, and the talent to manage their own investments. And quickly, their time. It takes time to figure out how to invest. It doesn't take very much time to invest. And I know technology is making that extremely simple. Like I look at my investments for less than an hour a year, and that's knowing all the different things I could do, right? In terms of tax loss harvesting and things like that. But so it doesn't take me very much time. It takes talent, again, to figure out how to invest and how to align your money with your personal objectives, but it doesn't take very much time to invest. The talent and the time. It doesn't take very much talent to actually click the buttons on Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard. It's the temperament. This is the part that really dictates if somebody should work with an advice-only financial planner or someone who manages investments. So I work with, on the delegation DIY spectrum, I definitely sway to helping more of the DIY investors. So it's really, I'm just serving, I'm serving different people differently, and specifically families who haven't been met where they are traditionally in the industry.
Yeah, I think it's important to call out that, I've never heard you say all advisors should be advice only. No one should manage investments. You're a crook and conflicted if you do that. Like, I've never heard you say that. What I've heard you say is, for my client base, which are educated DIYers, which I think the educated part is really, you said educated, that you're reading Kitces articles and you can get through those as a consumer. Like, I can barely get through them as a trained advisor. There is a level of just that client needs a different service and has different expectations than even, I would say maybe the broader range of DIYers, which is different than sort of our traditional clients. And so really, at least what I'm hearing you say is that you really started with the ideal client in mind. Who are you trying to serve? How do they want to be served? What's the service model they're looking for? And then built backwards versus starting with, hey, this is the only way to do business. And then I'm going to go find the client that this works for.
Right. Yeah. And that's the biggest part, is that you have to ask, whom do I serve? How do I serve? In as much detail as possible. I believe that the fee model and how much you charge is actually the last decision that you make before you launch your firm. And I know that traditionally it's been, you pick a fee model and then you pick a service model. It's like, no, that's backwards. So it's what's funny. A lot of people kind of think of me as a fee model guy who kind of bangs the table. I'm least passionate about like what we're paid or how we're paid. It's more about being intentional about who and how you serve, and in meeting the client like exactly where they are. So in terms of the fee model answered itself exactly once I had those two questions answered in as much detail as possible. The only answer at the end of that if I had the whole form, a one-page form of all the things that were going to go into my practice, that equation, that formula equaled, they're going to do project-based financial planning, 3 months, 3 meetings for $6,400.
Right.
And that's just how it ended up.
Down to it. So let's talk about that. So you said you're charging $6,400 now for financial planning. You have built just the incredible pipeline of clients. How many prospects are coming to you on a weekly, monthly basis now?
About 20 per week.
20 per week. And of course, you're doing all of those. I'm kidding.
I'm taking on $6 million in annualized revenue.
Most advisors
I don't even know how I had time for this. Yeah, I didn't even have time for this interview, Alan. So I'm actually a big thing I'm passionate about is generosity within the industry. So since I'm at definitely full capacity, deliberately full, but my website, Measure Twice Financial, specifically, it gives all prospective clients a referral list of other advice-only financial advisors. So I'm referring out all 20 of those clients per week to other advisors without any referral fees.
Yeah, I'll say, if you're starting a firm or if you feel like you're struggling to grow and want referrals, go advice only. Email Cody.
And talk to Cody.
Get on his website. Just because, in the end, you've done a phenomenal job of building the pipeline and in building sort of this pipe that brings in 20 clients a week. Now, is that 1,000 clients a year or 1,000 prospects a year at a decent close rate? Like, you could be bringing on 500 to 700 clients a year. So why not bring on 500 to 700 clients a year? Like, what? I guess talk to me about the decision that you've made to not go that route and to ultimately build a very successful solo practice.
Yeah, I decided to, instead of focusing on revenue, I decided to focus on impact. And I believe that with what I'm doing and kind of my perception and how I view, how the industry is changing, I think I'm going to have a much greater impact one-to-many than I'm going to have one-on-one. So rather than kind of burning myself out, making 100 financial plans a year and making great money, but like kind of saying like, again, end in mind, like, why am I actually doing this? I decided that I really want to become, it sounds a little cocky here, but I really want to become a thought leader in terms of generosity and transparency within the industry. I want to be known for giving, not just making lots of money or having tons of clients. So I'm actually trying to get away from all the quantitative metrics of advisor success and focus on giving more away than what I've been given. Because I do believe that giving to others, it certainly aligns with my core values of generosity, transparency, and intentionality. But I imagine how much impact it'll have. First of all, referring all those clients who probably, if I just said I was busy, right, and then didn't help them find somebody, they might just never find somebody. So
they're DIYers. That's their natural inclination. Is to
they're just like, I'm just going to go back to Google for my financial advice. So or the forums or Reddit. But so I'm just excited about the impact of providing financial planning. It's not about the business metrics. It's about, hey, families are getting like comprehensive financial planning, personalized education for the first time. Especially the anti-advisor community is actually kind of coming around to understanding that we do more than just manage investments. We actually, we care more about them. We care more about their family than we care about their money. It's been really hard to change that public perception about financial planning. So I'm helping them find financial planners. You think about like even the family financial tree, like what is the long-term impact of all those families being provided personalized comprehensive financial planning in their best interest? So at this point, I'm most passionate about changing the perception of what we do as financial planners, much more than I'm passionate about being advice only or having a certain process in place or making a certain amount of money.
So, but you still you want to have this big impact. You could build a big firm that's serving all these clients. Did you just decide management wasn't for you? You didn't want to scale a business, or was it more so time that you want to spend in other places? Like, what drove the decision to stay and really focus on building that solo practice?
Actually, it all comes down to the name of my brand, which is Measure Twice. I have a very hard time kind of offloading, delegating a very intricate and intentional process. So I feel like even if I were to delegate and have let's say I hired chief of staff and hired 10 financial planners to take on all this demand for financial planning, even though people will tell you, hey, you have a chief of staff to manage your planners, you go off and build your other stuff. In terms of being analytical, Measure Twice, I would always want to I'd probably spend all my time in quality control in terms of the Measure Twice process, because I have a comprehensive financial planning process that covers about 25 topic areas without using planning software. And to offload that process off to new planners who don't, it's not that they can't think like me, but I just imagine there's a lot of training involved and also quality control that that wasn't my highest and best use in the long term.
Okay. So really it came down to, it's not even necessarily management. It really came down to you have a process. In a way, you kind of want to protect the integrity of the process and recognizing how much time it would take and just energy to oversee it. I mean, it reminds me of Kitsis. We'll have to have him on at some point to talk about how it wasn't too many years ago, he wrote every single word that goes on his blog. He doesn't write all of it anymore. He's been able to start handing that process over, but it has been years of hiring and training and mentorship and defining things you didn't know you needed to define so that he felt good that the brand was being properly represented. And that's really what we're talking about here. It's not about being micromanagey about the process as much as it is about protecting the brand. And that's a hard thing to train when it's that intricate and that tied to you. But
I would just one more thing to add there. Another one is I didn't want to just be in the business of providing financial planning to people who could pay $6,400. I do believe, even though I'm not a financial planner who is I'm definitely not the most affordable financial planner, but I'm really passionate about the families who need other, I want to educate the public about those other options, those other service offerings that, for example, Eric Simonson, he's building an enterprise advice only firm. He wants to serve 20,000 families and he only charges $139 a month for couples. And $89 for individuals.
$15-ish $100 a year. That's, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible, especially like kind of versus the other, the other way, either the AUM models that won't serve you until you make them profitable, or like, so I'm most passionate actually separate from like helping people build their practice. I'm just so passionate about the power of financial planning. And I don't believe the public at large understands what we do, how we do it, or why we do it. So I'm going to focus a lot more of my time moving forward on changing the public perception of actual financial planning, actually separate from implementation as well, which I'm sure we could talk a little bit about.
Sure. So yeah, I don't want to lose sight. And again, I don't want to harp too much on the advice only stuff. And do you remember what episode you were on Kitsis's podcast?
Yeah, I can.
I was say you can Google kitsis.com and Cody Garrett, you'll find it. But you were on
episode 255.
255. So you were on Michael's podcast, really talking a lot about advice only, what that means, and all that. So I don't want to overdo that here, just to be redundant. Folks can go over there and listen to it 2x speed with you and Michael. That sounds fascinating. People tell me they try to listen to me at 2x. I can get to like 1.5, and that's about as maybe as well as my Southern roots.
Yeah, we definitely think faster than we talk, so that's why we can always speed it up.
That is true. But one of the things I want to talk about is some of the other things that you're working on. So you've built this practice, and how many clients are you going to work with this year? Like, what's sort of your cap?
So I'm going to work with 22 clients, which is 2 a month, but taking a full month off in December. I call it my Red X month, where I take a full month off.
Okay.
So I work with 2 clients a month, 10 hours a week, 140,800 in gross revenue. And about a 95% profit margin on that before paying myself. So about 10 hours a week in my financial planning, my solo RIA.
Yeah, just to call that out, that would be the equivalent of 2% of the prospects that are coming in, because you said 20 a week, you're working with 22 clients. So
good problem to have. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it. I guess just from a process standpoint, how do you filter 1,000 people are coming in, you're going to work with 22 of them. You're clearly not talking to all 1,000 of them. How do you filter down to the 22 you're going to work with from just a process system standpoint?
Yeah, the 22 really just were like the first in line when I first launched. So I launched within a week of launching it, or I had about 17 clients reach out, prospective clients. So it'll actually get to the point where I'm only working with the clients that I've worked with before. Probably by the end of this year, I won't take on any new clients. It'll just be clients that want an annual project-based engagement moving forward.
Okay, so most of those clients are ones that you expect they'll need a not new plan, but an updated engagement once a year. So it'll turn into sort of a recurring fee.
Exactly, and that I'm actually feeling it now. So I just passed my first anniversary, and now a lot of the clients I started with are reaching out and saying, "Hey, hey, it's June or it's July, like we need to do our update." So they're reaching out now, which is, I have about 45 clients on my waiting list, but I'm slowly also referring those prospective clients away. Because again, I don't want people waiting 2 years for financial planning when I know they actually needed it yesterday.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Okay. So primarily at this point, you're not filtering through those leads. You're just sending all of those leads somewhere else.
Here are 17 other advice only planners with a variety of service process fees and niches who can serve you. Definitely better than I can serve you at this point.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So you've intentionally kept it to 10 hours a week. Why is that? Where do you want to spend the rest of your time? Because we mentioned several times just around intentionality with time. So clearly you have a purpose behind that. So where are the other 30 plus hours a week going in your life at this point?
I'm just laying in a hammock in the backyard.
Isn't it beautiful? On the beach.
5-hour work week. Yeah, exactly. A lot of advisors are building a financial planning firm. Like that's their baby, right? For me, I'm trying to build a brand, like a personal finance brand, which is Measure Twice. So even in terms of trademarking, like Measure Twice is in the process. Same with my phrase, keep finance personal, which you'll probably see on the back of my shirt when I get to XYPN Live this year. But I'm building a brand, which is a multi-structure brand. So I have 3 businesses. The first we've been talking about a lot, which is Measure Twice Financial. That's one-on-one comprehensive financial planning. Kind of highest and best use, highest price point, but deliberately limiting that capacity. The second is Measure Twice Money, which is a personal finance educational blog for DIY investors. So I'm teaching DIY investors how I develop a comprehensive financial plan, how I do it. That's the Measure Twice Money is ultimately going to turn into a nonprofit where I want to just educate the public about the power of financial planning, whether or not they hire an advisor or not.
And then, is there a revenue stream associated with Measure Twice money?
Not at this point. And it might actually become just revenue for the sake of keeping it going.
That was going to be my question. Yeah. Once you want it to be maybe more than just yourself trying to keep it up, like, is there but you're not currently you're not charging for workshops or webinars or access to templates or anything like that. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm giving everything away for free at this point. So the third one, can I say, well, how does Measure Twice money, like how is all this educational content created and funded? So kind of the roundabout way of funding my ultimate passion, which is changing public perception of financial planning, is Measure Twice planners. So Measure Twice planners, when I mentioned to other advisors that I was going to educate DIY investors on how I develop a comprehensive financial plan, they said, hey, like, I want to learn how to do that too.
Yeah, educate me, please.
Right? Because the CFP program is great in terms of teaching you rules and concepts, but you don't come out of the CFP program actually knowing how to develop a comprehensive financial plan, like reviewing all those financial documents, communicating recommendations to clients. So I developed Measure Twice Planners as an educational platform to teach other advisors how I developed a customized comprehensive financial plan, communicate those recommendations. And with that, it's also sharing, like, I don't use financial planning software reports. I create all my financial plan in Word, Excel, and PDFs. So sharing all the templates, all the Excel calculators. A big thing I'm passionate about there is, I won't talk about pricing here, but a big percentage of any revenue that comes through Measure Twice planners, like, actually, I'm going to sell that most likely as an annual subscription to have access to the video course, webinars, things like that, tools.
Sure.
But a big portion of that is going to fund CFP education scholarships or CHFC scholarships. I know we have a big it's hard right now in the profession that you can't get your CFP without a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
So CHFC and CFP education scholarships will be a big. Again, I want to bring generosity and transparency into every part of the brand. So Measure Twice planners will be educating other advisors, especially kind of within the first 5 years of practice, on how to develop a plan, and then to fund scholarships as well, and also funding future Measure Twice money scholarships when I ultimately teach DIY investors on how to create their own plan.
So had the scholarship started, or that's sort of the long-term vision for how that's going to get set up?
I think the scholarships are most likely going to start at the end of the year. I've already connected with CFP program directors to create a needs-based scholarship program.
Okay, very cool. Well, and I say on behalf of the profession, thank you for doing that, because that is, it's a huge need. I know I think we do 30 CFP exam scholarships a year through XYPN and paying the exam fee. And we get a lot more than 30 applicants. And there's just a huge need and those big barriers. Now that the educational program is its own behemoth to try to work through. So, but yeah, I mean, we need more planners. We need more advisors who are interested in working with a different client demographic. But the truth is, like, as a professional, we don't have enough advisors to work with just the clients we've historically served. Like, we have an advisor shortage. And here you are opening up the floodgates to, if you work with 20, you need at least 50 advisors to work with just the prospects you're, bringing in already. Like, there's just not that many advisors. And so we need more people coming into the profession and, that can ultimately work with these clients and have similar life experiences, shared experiences, that sort of thing. So that's a huge win.
Well, I know that's one reason. A lot of other advisors have asked, like, hey, like, can I be on your referral list? And I've specifically kept my referral list only, like, advice only, just because the demand far exceeds the supply. And sure. I also see, I would love, if you're listening to this, I would love for, like, even a year from now for the list of advice only financial planners to double. If you're listening to this before October 2022, we are actually going to have an advice-only panel at XYPN Live this year. So if you want to learn about the profitability, sustainability, and scalability of advice-only, we'll be there to discuss that this year.
Absolutely. And, again, I built my practice on the back of referrals from an advisor who had $1 million minimum and was a NAPFA advisor and just wanted, she would send me the $400,000 clients. I manage money, but and I'm like ecstatic. And she's like, I could never possibly work with this client profitably.
Their B client is your A client, right?
Oh my God. Their E client was my A client. I was like super stoked, but I think it's one of the coolest things that I can't say I anticipated or expected, but it's been so great to see amongst XYPN members is that so many clients get referred between them, whether that's niche based. And, if I have one niche and your niche comes to me, we're sending them back and forth. Like there's so much of that happening. But really, you don't have, if you want to go build the next Measure Twice Financial brand and that's your thing, great. If you aren't the marketing person or don't really want to go build that brand and really just want to hit the ground running, not that you need to be advice only, not that you should be advice only just for this reason. However, if that's the type of client you want to serve, like building out that, building out advice only business and connecting with folks like yourself and others, like you really can get some pretty significant lead flow from other advisors who are full, quite frankly. And I hear this from, I think about I talked to Shane and AJ with Brooklyn FI at the conference last year. And they're like, hey, do you know any people that specialize in stock options? Like I think they told me 14 clients a month, maybe more than that they were bringing on because they're building a big firm, but they still couldn't take care of all the clients that were coming to them. So if you love stock options, connect with Shane and AJ, there's these different avenues, as you're building a firm. So I just encourage folks to really explore that.
Yeah. There's a great book called The Go Giver by Bob Berg. And there's this quote, I always kind of rephrase it, but it's giving is not a strategy. It's a way of life. And I really do believe I've never seen the level of generosity that I've seen, especially within financial planners, like this community. We talk about, mastermind groups, it seems like we're all cheering for each other, literally giving everything away without expecting anything in return. And I think if you're a generous person or if you want to receive generosity, you're going to experience that, not necessarily in every part of the industry, but in the financial planning community, it's unbelievable. And I think that the public also needs to see this, right? That's another thing I'm passionate about is let's show the public how generous we are within the industry so they can go, wow, those are the types of people I want to work with.
I love that. Because on our, we sort of have our ideal client profile as XYPN and the types of advisors we're looking for, and giver, not taker is one of the lines on there. Because we do find, so many, really all of our advisors will give the shirt off their back. They will give the most important thing, an hour of their time, to be able to help another advisor. And that's just the side of the profession I was drawn to. I saw that in the fee-only community when I got into this industry. Definitely saw it on the other side as I did some internships through college. But you're right, that it really is sort of this I don't know, it's a helping profession and helping people help others, whether they're helping their clients or helping other advisors, which is just
we all win.
Incredible to
right?
see. Yeah. Exactly. And there are way more clients than there are advisors. So, give me a red ocean. Okay. Some of us may get a little bit more competitive, but right now, we are a very long way away from ever truly having that level of competition.
Well, I have a quote about that. It's that you're only competing if you're copying. So if you're doing something differently than somebody else, you're therefore not competing. And when, some people will tell me, hey, advice only is competing with the AUM advisors. I'm like, we're serving different people differently. There's therefore no competition since we're not doing the same thing.
I love that. That's a good quote. One thing that we were talking about in the pre-show as we were just sort of chatting was that with Measure Twice Financial, you've made the conscious decision it's going to just be you. But you did mention that you were also looking at building out teams for some of these other the other brands with money and planner. So which one of those are you planning to grow and sort of add team to? And I guess what's the purpose behind that?
Measure Twice Financial staying solo. Measure Twice Planners most likely becoming boutique, having and not just administrative delegation, but also having other financial planners on the team who are experts in different areas. Who, again, I think Measure Twice Planners isn't just teaching people what I do and how I do it, but teaching specifically sharing with each other how we think. I think I met with incredible advisor, and so it's Dr. Jay Zigmont. He has a PhD in adult learning, and I had a great call with him. Again, he was very generous with his time. He was explaining to me that adults learn differently, and we can be a lot more impactful with our teaching if we teach people how we think rather than just what we do and what we how we do it. So I think in terms of growing that into boutique, I would love to have different planners with different perspectives, really creating educational content for other advisors there. This could also become like a Measure Twice Academy, where my financial planning process that I have at Measure Twice Financial, actually people could become kind of certified in my process and then use that as a value add when they go out to look for their first planning job. They can say, hey, they go reach out to a firm and say, hey, I'm Measure Twice certified. Like, I kind of like that idea of people being kind of prepared with having a plan process in place before they go look for their first financial planning job. Because I think most financial planners, like their first job, they kind of sit down in the chair expecting to be trained, and they're just like, okay, go
do an insurance plan.
Yeah, go make a plan. So I think that would be like more boutique, specifically having other financial advisors on board to become kind of educational, like centers of influence within the community. And then Measure Twice money, I actually see that could possibly become enterprise in terms of just spreading. And that, again, that's where I see the largest impact as a nonprofit to spread financial literacy, financial education, and teach consumers about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. I think that's going to not just necessarily enterprise and having tons of employees, but enterprise in terms of kind of like, there might not be like a net on the impact that can make.
Right.
So once Measure Twice Planners really kind of solidifies itself and has a stake in the ground and can free up even more of my time, I'm going to be most passionate about serving consumers.
I'm curious with your planning process. I mean, you're at a higher price point than certainly not the highest, but I mean, you're not charging $130 a month that the one advisor is charging. Is your planning process adaptable from a primarily time and energy perspective to be able to come down market a bit, or is it pretty? And I ask this question because I think about like, I'm a huge fan of Kinder and sort of the life planning that he does, but also like that process is not synthesizable. It's a big process. You're going to charge a lot. I don't know anyone doing Kinder planning for $1,000 a year. It just doesn't happen. So is your process, can you bring it down to size, or is it really intended for those clients who have those greater needs and are at a higher price point?
Yeah. So I come back to kind of thinking about the traditional industry and how the traditional industry thinks about financial planning. They kind of say, like, if I'm not getting paid more for it, why am I doing it? And that comes down to how can I've actually kind of heard this paraphrase from other advisors in which they say, how can I do the least amount of work for the most amount of money? And financial planning, to me, out of all the things that should be scalable in your practice, I do not think that comprehensive financial planning should actually be scalable. And it sounds kind of funny. I think that you can certainly create efficiencies in that process in creating your financial plan, but I really have a hard time with thinking about don't create efficiency, but lack effectiveness. Right? I think if you create enough efficiency in your financial planning that it becomes less effective and provides less value to the families that you serve, that's not the place to cut time and cut cost. So for me, I spend 20 hours developing a comprehensive financial plan, including the time with the client. That comes down to about $320 an hour. So it's pretty reasonable hourly rate. And that's actually with the efficiency of having my own templates and my own tools. But I really do believe, especially with Measure Twice planners, that it's not just going to be telling people, use my process. It's going to be encouraging planners. I believe that every planner should customize an efficient process that specifically serves the clients that they serve. And I think if you can create a customized process that's really molded around your specific clients, you're going to provide tons of value, and you can definitely scale. You can definitely scale or create efficiencies there. But I would kind of warn advisors, don't try to that's not the place to cut all your time out, because I do believe that as CFPs, our highest and best use is to do financial planning, which just right here, I've written down when I learned the CFP process, EGDM, it was establish, define client relationship, gather the client's quantitative and qualitative information, analyze that information, develop and communicate personalized recommendations, implement the recommendations, and monitor the plan. But yet I've heard a lot of other financial advisors trying to delegate the gathering of information, the analytical stuff, and developing the plan. They're delegating, the parts that I believe are actually the most impactful in communicating with a client. So I think the data gathering process is the most valuable part of the financial planning process, which sounds silly, but before you can provide recommendations or implement in a client's best interest, you have to truly understand their interest. So I'm very passionate about not cutting corners in the right places in the process.
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. My second question about your planning process is, and I think I know the answer, but is it designed to be a one-time type planning engagement, or is it really designed to be that ongoing relationship? Because those are two different prospects. Those are two different types of clients. If you're meeting with them even a recurring annual engagement is still a different client than the one who just wants to show up, talk once, and then, maybe show back up 5 years later. Is it really designed around sort of showing that ongoing value on an ongoing basis, or is it really about sort of the one-time plan or somewhere in between?
Yeah, the biggest misconception about the one-time plan is that it doesn't just have to happen once. So what I say there is,
and we should rename it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I call it project-based planning.
There you go.
At this point, in terms of
handled it.
Yeah, the three models in advice only are hourly, project-based, and ongoing. So yeah, I avoid the one-time financial plan because that's a big misconception because when you do a comprehensive financial plan, like when people ask me about the sustainability of advice only, or at least the project-based engagements that I do, I only work with a client for 3 months and they're no longer my client. They're like, how is that sustainable? And the most sustainable part about what I do is building the relationship. So relationships are much more sustainable than a fee model. So kind of back to your question though, is when a client comes back a year later, I still go through the comprehensive financial planning process. But yes, it is I even charge less. I charge 75% of the costs the next time years. They come. Right. Because there is less. It's just it's less and different. But yeah, I still provide the comprehensive plan deliverable even when they come back a year or so, because I've also I've defined the expectation for what the deliverable is, and they've appreciated that apparently enough the first time to come back.
Right.
So I keep it pretty consistent. But even though I do typically a 40-page financial plan for the first time, it ultimately ends up with what I call a measurable action plan, the MAP, which is kind of what people call the one-page financial plan. So you still come away with a one-page plan, but with all the supplemental educational material as well.
So you mentioned with advice only, there's hourly, project-based, which is what we've been calling one time, and then and ongoing. Do you consider your model project-based or ongoing if they come back multiple years in a row?
I still call it project-based because so ongoing in my head, it's probably a bad analogy, but it's kind of like the gym membership. I specifically didn't want to have an ongoing monthly subscription because I didn't want clients paying for the gym in the months they weren't going. And I also didn't want, actually a big part of this, just to be completely transparent, is I also wanted command over my time throughout the year. So since I don't have any ongoing clients, I can take off the full month of December. And it's not just that I tell clients I'm gone for December. I literally have no clients in my CRM.
Yeah.
So that sounds scary and things, but if you think about kind of the command of my time is very powerful and important to me, but also by not managing investments, I don't have a phone in my business. So I have so much control over my time. I have just Zoom calls and emails are the only forms of communication. And after 3 months, a client has their entire measurable action plan of things to implement over the coming year. And then they can check back as often as they'd like. But it also gives me the freedom to say yes or no every time they come back to work with me.
No, that makes sense. I mean, that's being very intentional with your time and talents and how you're trying to ultimately build the business. So, well, listen, Cody, this hour has flown by. So I'll jump to the final question, which is, if there's one piece of advice that you could go back and give your younger self, what would that one piece of advice be?
Okay. Make every decision moving forward. Like, let's say that you have two options to choose from, this CRM or this fee model or this fee model. Always ask yourself, which decision is going to provide more value to the families I serve? It's similar to flipping a coin. You don't flip the coin to see if it lands on heads or tails. You flip the coin so that in midair, you know which one you want it to land on. So if you make every decision in your business based on which one provides more value to the families you serve, you will therefore be aligning your business with what you claim is important to you, which is most likely, helping people, being generous, being transparent, the things that really hold us up as financial advisors and in this day and age.
I love it. Well, Cody, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your journey as a planner and building this really amazing advice-only business and brand. And hopefully some advisors will benefit from referrals down the line, as well as training and education through the planners side of what you're doing. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Alan.
Looking for an event made just for advisors like you? It's XYPN Live, and it's the conference experience you've been waiting for to help you reimagine your processes and reconnect with your purpose as a financial planner. With over 30 content sessions this year, there's expert knowledge for everyone and every firm, along with countless opportunities to connect with like-minded advisors and industry experts. XYPN Live 2022 is happening this October 8th through the 11th in Denver, Colorado. Learn more and grab your pass for this can't-miss event at live.xyplanningnetwork.com. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private Facebook group for fee-for-service advisors. It's the community you've been looking for that's there to provide support no matter where you are in your journey. Best of all, it's free. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP.
Thanks for listening to XYPN Radio. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to leave a review that will help grow the movement of fee-for-service advisors, serving next-gen clients and building the firms of their dreams. That's all for today's episode. Until next time.